Welcome to the SABC News COVID-19 Global Wrap, where myself, Babalola Phaka, and my colleague Busisiwe Khatebe bring you highlights of news which dominated headlines with regards to the coronavirus pandemic. But before we delve into it, let us have a look at some global stats. The world currently sits at over 45 million confirmed cases, with over 33 million recoveries and over 1.1 million deaths. South Africa has over 721,000 confirmed cases, with over 649,000 recoveries and over 19,000 deaths.
In South Africa, President Cyril Ramaphosa has begun a period of self-quarantine this week after a guest at a fundraising dinner he attended on Saturday tested positive for coronavirus. Meanwhile, the president of the Medical Research Council, Professor Glenda Gray, called on government to ensure that there's visible policing in all corners of the country. This as South Africa has reported more than 700,000 COVID-19 cases. Hence, the growing concerns for a second wave of COVID-19 in the country if people and businesses do not stick to hygiene protocols. People are urged to wear masks, practice social distancing, and wash hands regularly. And the Eastern Cape has raised concerns about scattered cluster infections of COVID-19 that may put pressure on its healthcare system as the province anticipates a second surge of the virus. The provincial government is now focusing on the state of hospital infrastructure and personal protective equipment sufficiency, which have been burning issues since the outbreak of the virus in the province. On to the rest of Africa, the continent has now recorded over 1.7 million confirmed COVID-19 cases with over 1.4 million recoveries, with the death toll at 42,404. Chairperson of the African Union, Cyril Ramaphosa, has urged African leaders to take necessary precautions to prevent a resurgence of COVID-19 infections that could lead to a second wave. Ramaphosa says this could necessitate the need for countries to revert to stricter lockdown regulations. And lastly, a vaccine scheme co-led by the World Health Organization is setting up a compensation fund for people in poor nations who might suffer any side effects from COVID-19 vaccines, aiming to allay fears that could hamper a global rollout of shots. The scheme is being set up by the promoters of the COVAX vaccine facility, which could foot the bill for 92 low-income countries, mostly in Africa and Southeast Asia.
In international news, over 500,000 people in the United States of America tested positive for COVID-19 over the last 7 days, with a record high average of over 74,000 new cases per day. The overwhelming surge has forced governors across states to impose a new round of restrictions to curb infections. According to a Reuters tally, more than 5,600 people died from the virus nationwide in the last week, and hospitalizations rose by 13%, particularly across the Midwest. Hotspots include Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Illinois, which reported 31,000 new infections over the past week. Meanwhile, the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Infection projects up to 256,000 virus deaths in the U.S. by November 21. And in South America, scientists in Chile are investigating what could be a possible mutation of the coronavirus in Patagonia, which has seen an unusually contagious second wave of infections in recent weeks. As seen in an Al Jazeera report, the remote region of Magallanes, which accounts for only 1% of the country's population, recorded nearly 20% of Chile's total thus far, suggesting a potential mutation of the virus. In Europe, the picture is looking grim as a string of countries continue to report record new cases as the growing threat of a second wave of the virus threatens to overwhelm the continent. Germany and France returned to hard lockdown on Wednesday, with France recording more than 50,000 new cases for the first time on Sunday. The World Health Organization says the continent is in dire need of a serious acceleration in the fight against the coronavirus, adding that a lack of contact tracing capacity could drive the disease into darkness. Meanwhile, Protests across parts of Italy flared up on Monday when citizens expressed their dissatisfaction over a new round of government restrictions meant to curb surging infections.
For the latest updates on the coronavirus, visit sabcnews.com.